All right, so today we are in our third session. We do have one remaining session on May 26th. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Just want to talk about our series outcomes, just as a quick reminder. Our main outcome is to prepare district and school leaders for successful continuous improvement experience. And we want to do that through three different ways. First is to work collaboratively to apply the MICIP process. We ought to use this time to share our successes and challenges with the process and the platform. And the main piece here, we really need to bring this learning back to our district teams. We're not able to complete all the work here today, but we will be able to get in and get some experiences with it. As Mike kind of defined it, we're the Kickstarter on the motorcycle, but you still have to use the gas and ride the bike home. And so specifically for today, we are going to connect the data sections that we did and the root cause work that we did in sessions 1 and 2 to the goals, end targets, and interim targets. So that's our first outcome. And then our second outcome is that we are going to be able to understand and use the MiStrategyBank and strategy implementation guides. So those are the two main things that we're going to work on accomplishing today. And for the third outcome, as has been in session 1 and 2, we really want to reflect on how to move this process forward with your district. Just a quick reminder about our team today. I'm Dave. I'm going to be facilitating most of the conversation today, although we do have a couple special guests. And Hilda is here. She's going to be monitoring the chat. Frank is feverishly working on the breakout rooms, and Mike is our pinch hitter and will be monitoring chat and again reminding me to start and stop with our breakout rooms. I see that Ben Borkel's here too. Ben, you want to say hi to everybody?
Good morning, everyone. It's good to have you with us today. Thanks to the team for putting together what looks like a great session again.
Thanks, Ben. So I have one reminder about collaboration tools, and we have a new tool. One of the feedback requests from our last session was to have an FAQ document. So the team got together and kind of thought about the sorts of questions that were being asked regularly here in these sessions and then also in our own work. And so we put together a starter FAQ document. And in that document, there's a link if you wanted to ask additional questions. And we encourage anybody to answer that. This is a collaborative series. You know, the facilitators here will do our best to answer questions, but we know that the real knowledge is out in the field. So anyone is welcome to answer any questions that come up in that question document. And then what our team will do is we'll kind of curate that document and we'll figure out which ones we want to add to that main FAQ document. So just a new way to ask questions today. You can always ask them in chat and answer in chat, and we will also copy and paste things over from chat in the document and those sorts of things, but just trying to capture that in a more permanent basis. A lot of questions were being asked and answered in chat, and then of course the chat has just gone. I don't know about you, but I wasn't saving the chat. So having this FAQ document is just a new tool for us to kind of more permanently get some of our questions answered. And as we've been using the whole time, we do have a resource repository, and that is a great place that if you have a great resource today about goal setting or about setting targets or about how to create strategies, this resource repository is a place for you to put those. We had some really great things added last time around the ladder of inference and how to set root causes and different ways to do root cause. So this has been a great resource so far for people to share. So just a reminder that this is a collaborative series. We really want to know what's going on out in the field and the great work that's being done, and we can all work together to make that happen. We do have our optional session today. This main session is done at 10:30, and the optional session starts at 10:45. We're going to have a Nexus update, and so our audience is state and federal program directors, but if there's anybody here that works in Nexus or has previously worked in MEGS Plus and would like to know about Nexus, you're welcome to stay. And Nate Beelan from the Office of Educational Supports will be doing that presentation today. All right, so we're just going to kind of jump right into our first outcome, which is to connect to our previous work. And last time we really talked about a few main pieces and around root cause. And the first was that there are many causal factors to anything that we're identifying as needs or real strengths or asset for our districts. And if we're able to identify the root cause of those, then we'll know that we're addressing or continuing to do the main thing that's having that positive or that needed effect. And we don't want to make goals around things that are surface causes. We want to really get down to the root cause. And so we talked about a whole bunch of different ways to do that. We also talked about the fact that we do bring our own experiences, our own beliefs, our own biases, our own backgrounds when we're thinking about root cause. And some of the tools that we looked at last time helped us surface some of those biases and kind of get past those to really get down to what the root cause is. So the ones that are built into MICIP were the fishbone and the 5 whys that we had some experience with last time. But in the dashboard, we linked out to many other resources, and there are still more of those in our resource repository. So you don't have to do fishbone, you don't have to do the 5 whys, but really digging in and getting down to the root cause is very important. And we'll get a reminder about that as we go along and see how that connects to setting our goals and strategies, and in the future, our activities. Off of our Jamboards, there were a few things that I wanted to pull out that I thought were a great reminder for everybody. The first one was somebody had said, it's okay for things to be possibly wrong and definitely incomplete. So that was that quote out of that Reich book. And they went on to say, we're all learning and we'll improve our processes over time. So I thought that that was a good reminder as we're moving forward today. Someone else said, we aren't behind. We're ensuring that we start this new process from a place we can be successful. So we were hearing that a lot, that people were like, I just feel behind. I don't have anything in there yet. I still am not sure what we're doing. We don't have a team made. But this is the year for us to work on those things. And so that was a good reminder from this person. All right, I'm going to go ahead and log into MICIP and just kind of get us caught up to where we are so everybody can see what that looks like in MICIP. And I'm at the training site, and we'll talk about how to access the training site in a little while. So I'm going to go ahead and hit login. And since I was logged in previously, it still has me here. So when we log in, we're here, we'll see what things are in process. And so we're here, we're our MICIP collaboration series demo. And I want to go to the Discover Data section. So when we get in here, as a reminder, we have all of our different data sets that we uploaded. So we had some MiFi data, we had some school climate survey data, and you may remember that when we went through our process last time, we completed the fishbone diagram and we uploaded the fishbone diagram as a new data source after we had kind of worked through the data, the Discover Data portion. And then we were able to use all of that information to do the 5 whys. So if you weren't here for the last session and are interested in that, I recommend to go back and check out our video for that one. So down below, we completed the data story. So we did our initial data analysis. As you saw, that most of all of our data is really around student health, wellness, and social emotional learning. And so our data analysis was around those areas too. We thought about the different things we were doing in districts around these areas. We wrote a gap analysis and our district data story summary. And from there, we first did our fishbone, and then we went back and did root cause with the 5 why analysis. And after working through the 5 whys, this example data set, we kind of ended with, we need to educate all of our staff to help them understand why this SEL work needs to be a priority and make the connection between SEL and academic success. So that kind of brings us to where we left off. And so we are at the challenge statement. So we're going to come back here and continue filling this out here in a second. So we're all caught up to the last 2 sessions worth of work. So we're going to move on to, we're still in our outcome 1, and we're going to be talking about our goals, end targets, and interim targets. And we have 1 step yet to finish with the root cause analysis, and that is to identify a challenge statement. So what is a challenge statement all about? When we're writing a challenge statement, the best recommendations that I've seen are to write if-then statements that summarize whatever your root cause is. And we'll show some examples here in a second. So there can really only, in MICIP, there can only be one goal for a challenge statement. So if you start your data story and you get to that part, just know that we're only going to be able to end up writing one goal for a challenge statement. So if your analysis had a whole bunch of different directions or 3 or 4 root causes or those sorts of things, eventually you're going to have to get to the part where you write one goal. So you might either need to, if your problem is really big and you ended up with multiple root causes, you might need to dig into one of those root causes in a completely different data story and make a completely different goal out of it. The other option is that you can try to just broaden your goal. So if you have multiple root causes, you can try to broaden your goal out a little bit. And so I have the example we're going to be using today. I ended up writing a little bit of a broader goal. So we'll take a look at that here in a few minutes. So here are a couple of examples of some challenge statements. And I took these out of the GELN Literacy Theory of Action. And although these come from a theory of action, I think that they make really good challenge statements because they have that if-then quality to them. So one of these says, if teaching teams and individual teachers are supported by quality coaching, then we can strengthen the literacy instruction practices for all Michigan teachers. So you can really start to think about, oh, how could we write goals around that? What kind of strategies could we put in place if this is our challenge statement? And the challenge statement really helps with both of those things. It's going to help you to figure out what your goal is, but also what strategies to put into place and the specific actions through your activities that you're going to put into place. So I thought that first one was a good example. Another example that they had in that GEL and Literacy Theory of Action, if we have essential instructional practices and literacy articulated and adopted at the system level, then we can align research, practice, resources, and policy. So again, that kind of gives them a big solid jumping off point of how they might write a goal about that and what strategies they might put into place. All right. So then we finally have down here from our practice data set. So the data set that we just did a quick review of. So thinking back to that root cause analysis, this was the challenge statement that I came up with. If staff have a better understanding of students' social emotional needs, then we can better engage students and improve outcomes. So we're going to go with that. And when we get into our breakouts, you'll have the opportunity to write a better one if you'd like. So it's definitely not the be all end all. But just kind of thinking back to the data that we analyzed, the root cause analysis, the fishbone diagrams we made, seemed like that this fit with our data set. So I'm going to go back over to MICIP and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paste that in there. And this will become our challenge statement. If staff have a better understanding of students' social emotional needs, then we can better engage students and improve outcomes. So I'm going to go ahead and click over to define our goal now. Hopefully I'm not making everybody dizzy by popping back and forth between windows. So as we've been talking about this whole series, the districts don't need a goal for everything that they're working on. And even when we are kind of past this first year where we just have to do the one goal, it is not plausible or feasible or doable to write a goal for every single thing that you're doing. So what you're really thinking about here is what are the main priorities that our district has, and what is it that we really want to work really hard on implementing, monitoring, and evaluating. And those are the things that you should set your goals around. So the days of having 5 goals or 8 goals or whatever it's just not plausible, and you can't do a good job with continuous improvement with that many goals. That's not to say that there's not that many things to work on, but what is your team really going to focus on and really going to work on to implement well, to monitor and evaluate? And those are the things that you should be setting your goals around. So that's kind of the main thing to think about when you're doing your goals. I get lots of questions about how many goals should we have, and Do we need a goal for every academic area? And so I always kind of come back to this thought process of how many goals do you think that you could really focus on? What's really important for your district that you think that you could get in and do a great job of implementing, that your team can get behind for monitoring, that you're going to talk about at your district improvement or district network meetings, that your buildings can get behind. Those are the sorts of things that you want to set your goals around. And in the MICIP process guide on page 27, there's a really great list of considerations for as you're thinking about what are we going to set our goals around. So I'd recommend everybody to take a quick peek at that if you get an opportunity. And as we talked about this year, there's just one goal required, and there's some more information in the FAQ about that as far as, well, how does that work for state and federal programs? And don't we have to have goals set around how we're spending our federal dollars? And so that's all addressed in the FAQ. So for this year, like we've talked about earlier, we're learning, we're working together, we're collaborating, we're building our teams. And so we have a great opportunity this year to just dig into one area that's really important to us and to work on writing a great goal that we feel like we can implement, monitor, and evaluate. So when we're writing our goals, we are working on writing SMART goals. And so these are a couple from the process guide. So they have some examples here. So, across our middle schools in the district, we're going to decrease student absenteeism at each grade from 6 to 8 from blank percent to blank percent as measured by attendance reports by June of 2025 maybe. So you can see here that they are being very specific. They talked about the schools in the district. They talked about which grades. You can tell that it's measurable because they mention specific percentages. Depending on what those percentages are, maybe it's attainable. If they said that they're going to go from 30% to 100% in 1 year, maybe that's not an attainable goal. So you can see that they really kind of worked on putting those SMART pieces in place. Second example, across high schools in the district, increase the percentage of students feeling safe at school in grades 9 through 12 based off of some percentages as measured by the annual student survey. So that's just another example of a good SMART goal. So if you have been paying attention to some of this stuff recently, people kind of wanted to expand what it meant to have a SMART goal. And so you may have heard of smarter goals or SMARTY goals. So let's take a look at what those are. So smarter over there on the left is all those other areas that we had before. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, timely. And what they did was they, sometimes you might see time bound for timely, but for after that, they added evaluate and readjust. And I really like to think that that process is built into MICIP. So I don't feel like you need to write into your goal how you're going to evaluate and readjust. That should be built into the process. But I know that a lot of people are working on smarter goals because it gets at some of those things we talked about earlier. When you're writing a goal, what do you think that you can really monitor? What do you think that you can evaluate? And so I do like the idea of smarter goals. I just don't think you probably need to write one here because the very next thing we're going to be doing is writing how we're going to be evaluating that and readjusting it. But then we have our SMARTY goals. So again, the SMART part is all the same. And then they put an added inclusion and equity. And I really think that this is a great idea. And if you aren't able to add it into the goal, I think there's probably ways that you can add that into your end targets or interim targets. And so I'll have an example of that here in a minute. So I think that it's just a really great idea of adding that in. And just a little spoiler for our last session, Ben is going to be doing our bonus session on May 26th around the ways to use the continuous improvement process to improve the equity in districts. And so this is just a great time to start thinking about that is when we're writing our goals, how could we maybe write SMARTY goals, or at least make sure that we're including inclusion and equity in our end targets, interim targets, and the specific strategies and activities that we're selecting. So that kind of gets us caught up on what SMART goals are. We really want our goals as we're writing to be SMART goals. And if it works for the goal that you're writing, you might also want to consider SMARTY goals. So let's think about back to our challenge statement. So our challenge statement was, if staff have a better understanding of students' social emotional needs, then we can better engage students and improve outcomes. So I made up this practice goal to try to attack that. So our practice goal is to improve student engagement and social emotional outcomes across all subgroups as measured by the MiFi and school climate survey by June of 2024. So you'll see a few things about this. As far as specific, I think we did pretty good with that. And also with attainable. It could be, we don't get to specific percentages and things like that. So I tried to broaden this goal out a little bit. So it doesn't say we want X percent of students to be, be all the way caught up, or something, or that sort of thing, because there were a variety of different data points. And so I try to keep it a little bit broader, but we at least do have it time bound here. And I tried to hit at least a little bit of the equity piece in this, making sure that that we didn't just improve things for one group or in the aggregate. We wanted to make sure that all of our subgroups were seeing an improvement here. So we didn't want to leave one student group behind and just elevate the rest of the students. So tried to call that out a little bit to make it a little bit smarty-ish, if that's a word. So let's pop over to MICIP and let's get that entered in as our goal. So when we come in here, when we get to this, after the challenge statement part, we're here to define our goal. And it says to create a one-sentence goal to solve the issue defined in your challenge statement. The goal should include a measure and a due date. So I think we sort of have that. We have what our measures are. We're not sure of our percentages yet, but we're going to get to that. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that in there. And what it's asking here now is, what do we want our due date to be? Well, we don't want it to be tomorrow. I can guarantee you that. So I like to, instead of typing the date in, you can just use the calendar. And I wanted to point out a little pro tip. If you click the year part of it, you can select the year. And if you click the month part of it, you can select the month. So a lot of times it doesn't split it out like that when you're in these little calendar features. So I thought that this was a really nice feature. So we said by June of 2024. So I'm going to go to 24. And I'm going to go to June. And I'm just going to say, we're usually done by at my districts, we're usually done by about the first week of June. So I'm going to go ahead and say that. So we go ahead and now we have our goal is defined. And we do type in a short name for the goal. And the reason for this is what's going to show up in your portfolio. So instead of the whole goal statement showing up in the portfolio, your goals will be, you'll have these little named goals there. And so we're going to say improve student engagement. Let's just call it that. All right, so we have our goal defined. We have a goal due date. We've named the goal so that it shows up nicely in our portfolio. So the next step is that we are going to identify end targets and interim targets. So end targets are really, where do we want to be? What are the specific things that we want to see at the end of that goal time? So for us, June of 2024. And so I came up with these couple of statements based off of our data sets that we have for our practice data sets. So the first one is to increase the percentage of students that strongly or somewhat agree with I like school from 67% to 85% by June of 2024. So that came out of the student school climate survey. Also, we want to reduce the percentage of students reporting that they feel unsafe or very unsafe at school by 6% by June of 2024. So the MiFi, as you know, only comes out every other year. So I wasn't quite as ambitious with the MiFi data as I was with our school climate survey data, because we can pull that school climate survey data multiple times a year. So let's go ahead and plug in those end targets, and I'll show you a few things about how that works in MICIP. So we come down here to our end targets. I'm going to go ahead and click Add Measure. And for this first one, I'm going to actually do a qualitative goal. So you can do quantitative goals or you can do qualitative. And you'll see that all of the selections here are all of the different data sets that we uploaded. So it's really, really important, all the way back to that very, very first step when you're making your data story. You need to upload the data sets that are going to be important to your goals. So that's why when we talked at the first session, it's very important to make sure you're really paying attention to the data sets you're selecting and selecting the right data sets. So for this one, it was around the school climate survey for students. You can have quantitative goals where you just put in what you want the percent change to be. I really liked the way that we wrote that first end target though. And so I think I'm going to put it in as a qualitative. So I'm going to come over here to qualitative, and you can put in just whatever wording that you wanted to have for that. And so I just put in our specific wording. For the next one, we'll try a quantitative. So it says, what do we want our due date? And since this is an end target, it automatically selected what we selected for our goal due date. You can change that if you wanted to do it a little bit sooner. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. Ben just made a great point in the chat. If you get there and you're like, but I want to make a target around something different that's related to this, just go back and add it back in. That's totally fine. That's kind of what we were talking about with that nonlinear nature. It's okay to go back. It's okay to find new things. It's okay to discover new things as you're doing it as you go along. Thanks for bringing that up, Ben. So I'm going to add in just as you can see here, we have one qualitative measure, and it's that one about increasing our percent of students that say that they like school. You'll see that there's a little square with an arrow here. This always means that you can open up a data object. So if I click that, it's actually going to open up and it's going to show the student climate survey results that I reference in the goal, or excuse me, in the end target. All right, so let's add in another one. So that was a qualitative one. Let's add in a quantitative one. So I'm going to say we want a quantitative measure. And for this one, we were using the MiFi unsafe or very unsafe report. And we wanted to see a decrease in value, and we wanted to see a 6% change was what we had said in our goal. So you'll see I don't really need to type in anything for an explanation. I could if I wanted to, but you'll see what happens here when I hit add measure. And again, so the due date is all set already for me. I click add measure. So decrease by 6%, MiFi unsafe or very unsafe. So it pretty much kind of takes care of all the wording for me. So if you think that the data, what you're trying to accomplish works with a quantitative, then you're welcome to do it that way. If you want to kind of be a little bit more flexible with the wording and how you're putting it in, then you can go with the qualitative. So now we have our end targets established. So we have our goal, we have our end targets, and so let's talk a little bit about interim targets. So interim targets are things that they're kind of like the markers along the way. And so I'm just going to add one. We could add more. We could certainly add more end targets as well. But for our interim targets, I'm just going to add one now. And that is, I thought about this, this piece about how we wanted to reduce the MiFi feelings of unsafe and very unsafe at school by 6%. And I thought, you know what, we should probably do a check-in on that because the MiFi comes out every other year. And so let's do that. Let's do a check-in after our next one, after we're able to put some strategies in place and make sure we're heading in the right direction. So I made an interim target around that reporting of feeling unsafe or very unsafe. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that in as an interim target. So I'm going to it works very similarly to the other one. You can have quantitative and qualitative pieces. And you can also have tasks, which I'll talk about here in just a second. So again, we're back to our MiFi unsafe and very unsafe. We wanted to see a decrease in value. And for our interim measure, we said 3%. And that was by 2022. So I'm going to just go back to 2022. And I'm going to put my last week of school for June 2022. And again, I could add in more if I wanted to, but I think this is going to tell us everything we need. So I'm going to say add measure. So now we have an interim target around that. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about were tasks. And so they come under these interim targets. And our group was looking at this and we thought, you know, we had some good information around the school climate survey, but we really wanted to know more from the kids, what they were thinking when they did that. And so we're going to make a task. We want to create a student forum to better understand the results of the student climate survey. And when we're doing that, we want to ensure that we have representation of traditionally underrepresented groups of students. So kind of back to that original goal, we wanted to see improvements for all of our student groups. So let's make sure when we do our forum that we're including students that may be traditionally underrepresented. So I'm going to put that in as a task. This isn't yet a measure, it's just a task. And so when we put that task in, you know what that's going to give us later is some new data. And as we're getting that new data, we can actually take that data and we can plug that back into our data set as we're doing our continuous improvement process. So we might have some notes from that focus group or some other pieces. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a forum to better understand our data. And we want to do that sooner than later. So I'm going to say that we're going to do that in by November of 2021. Let's say let's do it, make sure we get it done before Thanksgiving. And you can actually assign this to somebody. So we're in our demo site, so these are all just demo people. But we're going to say that maybe Alex is one of the social workers or counselor at the school, and we're going to assign that to Alex. And then we're just going to go ahead and add that. So now under our interim targets, we have this quantitative piece around the MiFi data. We also have a task that somebody is going to accomplish for us here in the district, and you can see right here who the owners of those different things are. All right, so I wanted to give everybody some time to think about and work on these things. So at this time, we are going to get into some breakouts. This is probably going to be the only breakout that we get into today, so we're going to try to make it a little bit of a longer breakout. Once we get back, we're going to really jump into the strategies, and we have a lot of things to talk about with that, with the strategy bank, strategy implementation guide. So I'm not sure that we're going to get time for another breakout. If we do, we'll definitely pop out into that, but we're going to have a little bit of a longer one now. And so if you're new with us this time and haven't been in a group before, you're welcome to just kind of hang out in the room with us. And we have lettered groups. Those are all groups of people. So it says like team A, team B, team C. You're welcome to join any one of those groups. So you can maybe just look for one of those that has a few less people in it. If you're joining from a team and your team is named, Frank made team names and all those, you're welcome to join those. We are doing the join your own breakout room technique. And this worked really well last time. I was surprised. So when Frank opens the rooms up, many of you might automatically get pulled into a room because Frank has been automatically assigning people. If he knows exactly where you're going, he's been putting you in the right spot. But if not, a little 4 squares is going to open up at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so this bar shows up for you. And you click that, and it'll give you the list of the breakout rooms. And one tip that we learned last time is you can minimize this unassigned spot because it's going to list everybody that's unassigned. Just click the little triangle there and it'll make it easier for you to select your breakout room. Last thing I'll say about it is we do kind of say we go by letter of last name just to help people get into the rooms a little bit quicker. So we'll say, okay, A through F goes, and about a minute or less later, we'll do the next group. And everybody will kind of get into the groups. So I'm going to pause there and ask Frank if there's anything that he would like to share about that.
So our breakout rooms are set up. They are currently untimed. And so it's not like, you have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. We're going to kind of see where our time looks at, and then be able to send everybody a message and let you know kind of like the 2-minute warning, so to speak. And then when the breakout rooms do close, you'll have a 60-second countdown, which will bring you back. It is set up so that if there is a mistake, or, if I've gotten somebody in the wrong room, or if you end up in the wrong room.
All right, got the recording going back again. I think most everybody's back. Gosh, really appreciative of some of the conversation I was able to get into about 6 or 7 different rooms. Great stuff. I think there were a couple of specific questions that came up around strategies, and I think I'm going to hold off on answering those and maybe addressing with the whole group, just to go ahead and yeah, Sherilyn, you'll be able to get back in, no problem. Just want to, I think when we go through this next section on strategies, I think we'll be able to kind of answer some of the questions that were popping up. So Lisa, we'll get to your part in just a second. I'm just going to do a little transition and introduction for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm just going to go ahead and go back to my screen sharing here. And we lived through our breakouts, so thanks for everybody's work in that time. All right, so we are on to our next part, which is all around strategies. And so we are going to talk about the MiStrategyBank today, and Lisa's here with us. And we are also going to talk about, kind of after we understand how those strategy pieces work in there, we're going to get into actually selecting a strategy and using the hexagon tool, and very importantly, strategy implementation guides. So that's how we're going to be using up the rest of our time today. So just want to talk about what are strategies, and this comes right out of the process guide. And it says that the roadmap to achieve the strategies are the roadmap to achieving the goal. And so they're going to include specific actions that adults will take, including what they'll do, who will take them, by when, and what the fidelity of the implementation looks like. And a lot of times this
You froze.
Yeah.
Am I back yet?
Yes, you are right now.
Okay.
You're cutting in and out. Yeah, a little bit of freezing.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
So hopefully everybody was able to see the definition of strategy from the process guide. And so we'll just kind of dig into that a little bit. What you're going to find is that all of this stuff, just like a lot of these other pieces, is not going to happen automatically in MICIP. You have to make those things happen. So MICIP is our tool. It's the place where these items get facilitated, but we need to make these pieces happen, right? And so that's some of the things we're going to be talking about today. And I just wanted to remind everybody about this whole idea that we talked about last time with the ladders of inference. And so this first part, there's all this available data out in the world, right? Well, we selected some of that data to look at, and through the discover data part, we paraphrased that data and named what was happening. Then when we did the root cause portion, we really explained and evaluated what was happening. And we talked about all these different pieces and how you can, as you climb the ladder, more of your own beliefs and background and experience and things like that start to come into play. Finally, you get to the part where it's, well, what are we going to do about this? And so that's kind of up here on the ladder on the left. We're in this part where we're deciding what to do about it, right? We're writing our goals. We're deciding what our strategies that we're going to be putting into place and what the action steps that each of the buildings are going to be doing. And so I just wanted to take this moment to just remind everybody that this part of it, we're also climbing the ladder, right? As we're making these kind of decisions. And so just to be really mindful about what your own experiences that you're bringing to it and that sort of thing. But I think this is just a good reminder as we're getting into selecting strategies and ultimately deciding what to do about these very adaptive problems that we have that we are climbing and using that ladder of inference. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Lockman. She is the MiStrategyBank lead, and she's up at Wexford Misaki ISD. I think, don't you also split your duties between another ISD as well?
Yes, Manistee.
All right, so just she has plenty of time to be dabbling around in the MiStrategyBank. So Lisa, I'm going to stop my share and let you share your screen. Does that sound great?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm going to give you guys a little tour of MiStrategyBank today. A quick reminder before we get started, MiStrategyBank is an electric clearinghouse of strategies designed to connect educational data systems, promote and support best practices, and provide information regarding the implementation of strategies used in Michigan education systems. You don't have to go directly into MiStrategyBank to pull strategies into MICIP. You'll be able to search and find the strategies that are in our global or statewide database right in MICIP and pull those in. But if you wanted to add your own strategies, I'll show you how to do that. And there's a couple other features in the Strategy Bank that I think are worth you knowing and looking at, and at least having one person in your district be able to use the Strategy Bank. MiStrategyBank was developed by Michigan educators in the spring of 2018, so it's been around a little bit. It was originally used to support MyRead. MiStrategyBank was expanded to include MICIP and to support some other education systems. So you'll see my early warning systems coming online this fall for some districts. And then the districts will just have one place to enter strategies, and you won't have to learn 2 or 3 systems if you're using multiple Michigan data systems. We do have kind of a multi-tier process for how we added strategies to MiStrategyBank. The first strategies were imported, so there were ESSA level 1 and 2 strategies that were brought in from What Works Clearinghouse. And over the past year, MDE and partner organizations have worked to curate strategies that they support and add them to that statewide catalog. The statewide organizations that want to add strategies can contact MiStrategyBank on the MAISA site and get curating rights and add strategies. So if there's other organizations that want to work together to add strategies that would be available statewide, they're welcome to do that. This is what your landing page looks like. So if you go in through the data hub, you can come into MiStrategyBank, and this is what your landing page will look like. To get a MiStrategyBank logon, you go to the MAISA MiStrategyBank page, and there's a form to fill out. Most ISDs have a ISD lead, and I think a lot of ISDs will work with you and help you enter strategies. So it's kind of option if local districts want to have strategies, but strategy administrators, but ISDs definitely should have strategy administrators, and they'll have some ability to put strategies at different levels of viewability. So they can set the strategies and decide whether it can be viewed regionally as an ISD, by a specific LEA, or by a specific building within the LEA. All right, and I have a few things I kind of want to go through, tips and tricks, if you will. So this is
Lisa, sorry to interrupt. Just before you get started on this, you had mentioned that about how they can get an account. I do have linked in our dashboard is linked to a one-pager that explains what the Strategy Bank is, how to use it, how to get around in it, and how to make an account. So just
awesome.
wanted to point that out.
And when you go out to the MAISA page, there's several one-page direction sheets. So if you just want to look at how to search, there's a page that shows you how to do that. If you want to look at how to add users, there's a page that shows you how to do that. So you can look at those direction sheets right on the MAISA page also. When you come in to Strategy Bank originally, you'll be in the dashboard. This second tab over is the master list. So these are all the strategies that are available, statewide strategies. There's 631 strategies that you'll see just as a new user coming in. Before you even think about adding a strategy, you'll want to look and see if your strategy's in the Strategy Bank. So we're really trying to have one copy of a strategy that has all the resources and tools and things that you would need to support that strategy built in it. If you don't find your strategy, I'll show you how to create a strategy, but your first step is always to look and see if the strategy you're looking for is already in MiStrategyBank. The filter right here is a title search. We're looking at a possible expansion of a keyword search, but right now this is a title word search. So when you're looking for a strategy, it has to be the exact name. I'm going to start out with just searching for code.org. So I put a title in the title search and click apply filter. I'm scooting you guys over so I can see my whole screen. And so you see the first strategy that came up is the computer science fundamentals, that's code.org. If I click on the link there, I can see the incomplete listing for the strategy. And it has a description, a title, the ESSA level, this is ESSA level 4. And you come down here, they have resources. So they have the code.org curriculum. You can click on that and that goes out to a link that's the curriculum. It has the professional learning. So if you needed more training for code.org to implement it, it has the standards alignment to the Michigan standards. It has a lead contact. We also had an upgrade yesterday. So coming soon, these will be filled in. If you see this little arrow button, that means another window will open. So right here, you can see I added this in this morning. So not all of them have information, but if you click on the curators, you'll be able to see curator information now. So that's a new feature. So you see the curator. And if you click on these prescriptions, you can see buildings that are implementing it. So if you wanted to reach out to a friend you knew in that building that's implementing this strategy, you can see that if you click on the prescriptions button. So that's one way to find a strategy. If I go back to that master list, one tip I have for you, the filters are sticky filters. So you have to click reset that filter if you want to go back to see the full list. One thing I also want to point out is the domain search. So we have a domain search. It was our first shot at helping people find strategies they're looking for. We know that some people found this cumbersome because if you're looking for some strategies, you're not sure whether that strategy is like a non-academic or a system. So we're hoping to get a keyword search put in that will help. So you can just put in a keyword. For right now, you might have to check more than one category. And we're talking to the curators. I think of the domains like a library card catalog. So you would link to as many outcome domains as the strategy impacts. And so you may have strategies that have both a non-academic and a systems domain outcome. I'm just going to click on arts and apply this filter. We have a few arts strategies that have an outcome of impacting arts. This high quality art program is something that was curated by Michigan Assessment Consortium. And several of our curators have done a nice job of adding implementation plans. So this talks about what your curriculum would look like and what the gold standard for implementation is and the research for that section. So this is a really nice implementation plan that Michigan Assessment Consortium has put together to support quality arts. You can go down, they have a EduPass course. So if your teachers needed more training, they could go out to the EduPass course. They have additional professional development resources. They have a Maya web page that you could go out to and learn about arts education. And then that's the curator here is Michigan Assessment Consortium. So using those domains is another way that you can search Strategy Bank. I'm going to reset my filter again. You also can search by curator. So if you knew that you were looking for things that were in the blueprint, you can go down here to the curators. There's lots of great curators. Michigan Assessment Consortium has a lot of stuff in. MySTEM Network has added a lot of stuff. For this, I'm just going to click on blueprint and apply the filter. And you see all the things that the blueprint group has added. So again, if you go into their strategy, this is instructional leadership routines. You can see a whole bunch of research on that and resources to help you implement. Here they have a contact. So if you want to talk to Lynn about implementing that strategy, I think she's on the phone call today. They also have other resources that you can go out to learn about those instructional practices and routines. Resetting my filter again. Now, I want to show you a quick list because this is a question I get a lot. If I just search for ELA, so a simple search, I want to improve my ELA strategies and apply my filter, you see I got 3 results. Oh, that's because let me reset that again. Oh, I don't know why it's doing that. If I go down here and click improvement and apply my filter, I only get one result. And so improvement means it's something that's going to show up in MICIP. So that's a really important feature when you're looking through MiStrategyBank, is if you're looking for things in MICIP that are going to push out to MICIP to click improvement. I'm going to reset my filter again and go in and use the domain search. So if I do academic and go down to ELA, I get 299. So what was the difference in those searches? The first search was ELA in the title because I typed it in that top line. So there's actually a lot more ELA strategies. So when I only got 3 in that first search, people are confused because they're like, oh, there should be lots of ELA stuff in here. Now I have just the domain searches on, and if I go to improvement and apply the filter, there's only 45 that are pushing out as school improvement strategies. The rest of those strategies were probably instructional strategies that were targeted for my read. So when you're looking around in the strategy bank and you see strategies that you don't think are improvement strategies, and that's what you're looking for, you want to make sure that you're selecting that in type as improvements. Those are the strategies that will go out to MICIP. And that's also really important if you looked in here and you don't find a strategy and you're ready to think about adding a strategy. So if I was going to go through all my filters and I can't find the strategy I'm looking for, it's just not in the strategy bank, and I want to add a strategy, I can click on this create a strategy button at the top. And then I just add in my title and the information. But when I'm at that type field, I need to click improvement. I'm going to show you a couple of those. The ESSA field, if you're adding a strategy and it isn't in MiStrategyBank and you don't know what the research is on the strategy and you haven't found it in a national database like What Works Clearinghouse, it's perfectly okay to say the strategy is not yet rated. That's probably the most appropriate thing to click. So the rating of strategies is a pretty technical process, and probably if it's something that is a promising practice, it hasn't been rated. And so you'll click the not yet rated. You'll only be able to put custom, and then you'll have to look it up when you're in a school district. So I'm signed in as a school district right now. You won't be able to add things to the statewide view. So you're going to have to pick where you want to put that. So if I was going to put it in Wexford, Misaki, if I click here and confirm my selection, any school in Wexford, Misaki will see that strategy within the MICIP platform. If one school had called me and specifically and said, hey, you know, we're switching our middle school from trimesters to semesters, and we really want a strategy about that, but it's pretty specific, I would go in here and click the school district, and now only that school district can see that strategy. If I was adding a strategy for one of my center-based special education programs, and it's pretty specific to students with emotional impairments, and I have the emotional impairment class at Wexford Misaki, and click it there, then only Wexford Misaki classrooms can see that, not all of my districts. So if that makes sense, if you're out here on the main click, everybody in your ISD can see it. As you narrow, so if you pick a school district and you want it to be a high school strategy, now only the high school can see it. If I leave it out here at Cadillac, any of the schools can assign it. So you have to pick where you're positioning the strategy. And this is coming from EEM. So if the information isn't correct, that's where they're getting the school district information. So you do use the lookup tool and place the strategy where you want it to go. You have some options of adding some times. So like if you wanted it to be so many days per week or so many weeks per year, you can add that information in. The same with cost. The resources, you add the name, description, and then it always is linking out to another web page. So you can add the resources. Here's that types field. If you want it to be in MICIP, you have to click school improvement. And then you won't have any clearinghouses probably. Grade levels are multiple selections. So you can just keep clicking grade levels, and you see I get my check marks and I get a running tally at the bottom, at the top right here in the line. And the same with ages. You can add the top 10 goals if it lines with the top 10 strategies, and those are also multiple selection. Genders are multiple selection, so it's probably both male and female, unless it's like girls that code, and then you just select one. You can add authors and publishers, and then when you're done, you just click save. I'm not going to save the strategy, but if you go into a strategy, once you open a strategy that you own, you'll have a little drop down here. All strategies start as draft. So once you enter a strategy, you have to go back in and make it published. So you just move the drop down arrow from draft to published. We have a new location tab. So if I click on the location tab, new supported tab. We had a location tab. The location tab really only works for MyRead. So I think it's a little confusing right now. And I think a future update will come and we'll be able to let you select which strategies you're looking at, if it's MyRead or MICIP. But for right now, by location only applies to MyRead. So you don't have to go in and move strategies. The new tab is called supported. So there's this supported tab. ISDs or LEAs can go in and select a strategy that they're going to provide professional development for. And so I have Wexford Misaki supports math recovery. So we added that as something that we support, and it shows up in this tab, and your districts that are under your ISD can see that. So when you add a strategy to this, you put in the strategy name, and then you get the list of strategies. So you just pick the strategy that you want to support. So Wexford Misaki also supports fractions. I confirm that, and it's added to my list of things I support. I can go in here and remove it if I want. So if I am not, but the idea is if you're going to do professional development around a strategy, or you're going to support it with your instructional consultants, you can add it to this list. And then your local districts will be able to click on that supported tab and see things that you're supporting when they're going in and searching for strategies. I'm gonna go back to my master list and filter my results. I'll do the math recovery, because there are a lot of math recovery options, if you notice that. So there's several strategies that say math recovery. So goodness, what's the difference between my math recovery, dimensions of math, and structuring numbers? And you see I'm getting a comparison list as I check these. So if I click, I can do as many as I want, add them, and then click my compare button, and I can see the strategies side by side. So if I want to go through them and look at the difference in the strategies, well, this one's ESSA level 2 and these are ESSA level 4. So that's a difference. You know, this is a vendor license and these are Creative Commons. So this one costs a lot more money than this one. So I can go through and really look at these strategies side by side, you know, the grade levels that they support before I assign them. So I can see, you know, a couple different people support these strategies. So I might have to go to different places for training. You won't be able to do that within MICIP. So you'll have to have a MiStrategyBank log on to use that comparison tool in this way so that they're side by side. And I think one more thing that I want to just go over a little bit is users. We put in some new filter searches for users. So you can look up users by email or location. I'm logged in as a Wexford Misaki viewer right now. And so all these people are Wexford Misaki viewers. That's what you'll see when you go in as the people within your organization. If you create a user, you have the username here and you have to assign them a role. So you use the same lookup tool to find them, find where you're going to put them. So if I select Wexford Misaki, they'll be able to see all the people and strategies within Wexford Misaki. If someone from a district is asking me, I can create, you all can create strategies for, if you're an ISD, you can create them for districts. If you're a district, you can create them for buildings. So you select where you want that person that you're creating to see and confirm the selection. And then you add a role. A strategy viewer can view all the strategies and use the comparison tool, and they can look at supported strategies. A strategy maintainer can maintain the strategies so they can add strategies. A viewer won't be able to add strategies. They'll just be able to look at the strategies that are in and look at the tools. A maintainer can add strategies and edit strategies within your location. And an admin person can view the strategies, edit strategies, and add strategies, and they can edit and add users. So that's the difference. They kind of roll up. So they gain more permissions. So an admin can do all the strategy and user maintenance. You also can add, like some people may need multiple roles, and so you're able to do that also. So if you click on a user, you can see she's listed as an admin and a strategy maintainer. When we change strategy maintainer, she probably doesn't need to be that, to have both, because they both do the same thing. But what she could do is you could have somebody be an admin in a building, so they could add building level users. She's at the same level, but and a maintainer at the district level, if that makes sense. So you could give somebody permissions to add additional users within their building, and only maintain strategies for the district. All right. Are there questions in the chat or things that people wanted me to cover?
Yeah, let's see if I can kind of curate those a little bit.
All right.
The first one was a question about, and I believe that this may have been answered with the last part that you just showed about being able to give people view strategy access. But they were asking about, Stephanie had asked about, is there a way to review them aside from logging into the district MICIP account without having a separate strategy bank account? Want teams to be able to review strategies without worrying about them individually changing or impact the rest of the process. So it sounds like the giving them access to the MiStrategyBank with the view access might be the way to go for that one.
Yes, and I probably didn't explain access very well. So let me start back up and say, only one person has to go in and fill out the MAISA use agreement, because that will make them an admin user, and then they can add all their local viewers and those kind of people themselves. And people will just go into the Data Hub site and be able to use, they'll have the authentication. So they don't have to create username and passwords or anything.
So they authenticate the same way they do into MICIP, right?
Yep.
That's
So
why we got
tile.
federated.
Yep, it will be just another tile in that screen that says MiStrategyBank. So you only need one user to go in and have an admin per district, and they'll be able to create those accounts for their other users.
And you can actually just go to MiStrategyBank.org, I believe is the.
Yep.
Yep. So you don't even need to go in through the tile. If you
No, but if you're used to going into the tile, there's a tile that will appear for Strategy Bank as soon as you have an account. But yes, if you go straight to MiStrategyBank.org, you can go right in. And if you're logged in once a day.
Angela asked if are there strategies designed for center-based programs, schools, and districts? So I'm wondering if she means to differentiate by those things, or.
I don't know if there are strategies for center-based programs in the statewide catalog, but I think some ISDs have added some. I expect that to expand as we have more curation groups focusing on those topics. I don't know if that was an answer to that or clear enough for specifically to center-based. And then, yes, there's things for districts and schools. They're not, there isn't a filter for levels like that.
Angela, if that didn't quite cover it, just put a clarification in the chat for us. Let's see, just a few appreciative comments here. Somebody had pointed out, and I think this got sent to me as a private message, maybe accidentally. There, I think Cognia as a curator. I think that this person said that there are several in Cognia for those that are in eProve. So I'm not sure if that came across as one of the curator pieces.
Yeah, I don't know if they're in as a curator or not.
Or, okay, not quite sure what that was.
So it's hard, it's when people ask the number of strategies, I was in just Rebecca's view. This says Rebecca Shanklin is the user for the 613. And if I leave this impersonation and go to my view and go to the master list and reset the filter, this shows you, this is how many strategies are in the strategy bank. A lot of those are only viewable at a district or an ISD level. So that's why, like when I'm looking in the strategy bank, a lot of people have added strategies at a local level already.
I believe we answered the question about, there was a question about who we contact if we don't have the strategy bank tile on the Launchpad. I think we were able to paste in some resources to help with that. Really liked your tip, Lisa, that only one person at an organization needs to actually fill out the form, and then they would be able to assign that to other people. That was a great tip.
Mhm.
There was a suggestion, and quite a few people kind of agreed with that, about through an equity lens, that gender option, maybe including either a non-binary option or to eliminate gender altogether. And I think just one thing to point out about that, until maybe that suggestion can be considered, is that and pretty much almost everything else in there is optional. And so if that doesn't apply or may make things more difficult or confusing if you did select one or the other, you don't have to make a selection for that. And most of the other things are optional as well. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yes, there's only a few required fields. And the other piece about that is we've played with trying to change that language. But if we want it to talk to things like What Works Clearinghouse, we're limited on some of those fields, or they have to be hand edited every time we do updates. So we have to match some of the national databases on some of those fields. But yes, I think that's a great thing for us to keep in mind.
Terry mentioned that in the MICIP footer, there's a under the resource tab, you can get a direct link to the MiStrategyBank there as well. So if you're in MICIP and you wanted to kind of pop over to the Strategy Bank, you can do that through the resources tab and right in MICIP. I'll just read Angie's. Is there any conversation to have all strategies in the bank show through the MICIP pinhole? I know that some aren't tagged as improvement and therefore aren't acceptable or aren't accessible through the pinhole.
I don't know if Terry has a comment on that. I think we are working on, in fact, I think this last thing that pushed out yesterday allows you to do multiple selections. So you can assign something instruction and improvement now. So I think that will help with that a little bit, because curators can have them show up in multiple places.
Angela had asked that question earlier about center-based programs, was wondering about if there was a curation group representing center-based programs. So we have some groups representing other organizations. Do we know about any that are representing center-based programs?
I don't, but I'd love to work with one if there is a name of a group that would be wanting to do that.
All right, I don't see any other questions. I hope I covered everything. Any other facilitators? Did we see anything, or did anybody send any private messages to anybody, any of the other facilitators? Okay.
No, I haven't seen it, but we can also put it out to the group. If you haven't put it in the chat and you'd like to verbally ask a question, now would be a great time.
Lisa, would you mind popping your email in the chat? It looks like Angela does have a group that she might be able to connect you with.
Yeah.
Or you could message her with that information. All right, awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Lisa, and giving us that overview. For everybody that just kind of listened through that, and if you're like trying to maybe frantically take notes or you got lost at a certain spot, the document that we have linked in the dashboard that's called MiStrategyBank Basics has links to presentations that go over all of that stuff. And this was also, of course, recorded, so you'd be able to go back and take a look there. So lots of resources to go back and be able to kind of get a review of that, but it was great to see it live and have Lisa, that's been working on this for so long, be able to walk us through that. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Yeah, and Dave, let me know if things come up in your frequently asked questions that you want me to take a look at. So
sounds good, will do.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, and I'm going to get into MICIP, and we're going to just take a look at what that looks like right in MICIP. So we were looking into MiStrategyBank, and you might have heard about things pinholing into MICIP and things like that. So that's what we're going to see now. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Can I get a thumbs up that we're looking at the correct screen? Okay, good. Technical difficulties abound. So after we finished our goal, actually, I'm going to go back here so you can see how this works. So this was where we had left off before our break, or before our breakout rooms. And so we had defined our goal, named it, and then we had defined our end targets and interim targets, including a task. So at this point, we're ready to go ahead and select strategies. And I just wanted to point out at this time, you'll likely have many more end targets and interim targets than this. This was just kind of more for demonstration purposes. It just depends on what your goal is, how many data sources you have, and things like that. So just know that there's not a specific number of end targets. There's not a specific number of interim targets. There's nobody that's checking to see how many qualitative and quantitative targets do you have. This is up to you. It's up to your data set. It's up to what you're working on. So we ended up with two of each just for demonstration purposes. So now I just click on to the strategy area. And you can always just see at the top about your challenge statement. You can see your measurable goal. I've had questions about, can you go back and edit those things? You can. You just click on edit. You can go back and you can work on them. You can go all the way back to your district data story. You can add more data. So you're always able to go back in this process. You don't have to worry about getting to a point and realizing that you weren't able to fix something. So we're going to go ahead and select strategies. What strategies can be utilized to achieve this goal? So when we get in here, you have two options. You can search for strategies, or you can browse strategies. And if you were to search for strategies, so we have an engagement goal maybe. So I could type in engagement, and it will come up to some engagement pieces. Or I could type in, it's kind of like a health goal as well. So there's, so you can kind of just search for your strategies. This is also helpful if you know through going through the MiStrategyBank that there are specific strategies that you want to incorporate here. You can type in the actual name of the strategy and add it that way. So that's the search feature. You can also browse the strategies, and those are broken out into those same areas that we did when we created our data story, which is academic, non-academic, and systems. So our goal that we have is really, kind of leaning more toward a non-academic type goal. And so I could really get in here. We could think about social emotional learning might be a good place for us to look. Behavior might be a good place for us to look. Behavioral health, health in general might be a good place to look. We're thinking about our kids' health and well-being. I've kind of looked through a few of these. MTSS, I think, would be a great strategy that we could select. And another one that I thought would be really good for us, and I think the one that I'm going to select is under the health area, is the Healthy School Action Tools. And so this is the one that I'm going to actually want to consider for us. So when I click on that, I'm able to get the strategy description, and you can see this is pulling straight over from the strategy bank. There's a detailed description about it. So they have some comprehensive tools designed to help Michigan schools and districts create a culture that supports learning by first measuring the health of school environments and then planning and implementing school-based best practices. And I know from my work on the HSAT and some other areas that there are a lot of really great things in there that I think would help toward our goal of making sure that our kids were able to engage in a safe and healthy environment. So you can see here about what ESSA level it was in and those sorts of things. There's lots of research that was plugged in for this that you would be able to go and take a look at if you weren't sure that this is what you wanted to do. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and add this strategy for consideration. You can add multiple strategies for consideration. And what this is here for is really, once you click that add strategy for consideration, it isn't yet selected as your strategy, okay? It's just there for consideration. And I really like that you can put multiple things in there and consider them, because if you decide not to use a strategy, it's documented that you decided not to use that strategy and why. So a lot of times people will come back and say, hey, I think we should do this. And you can say, we did actually consider that, and this was why we didn't move forward with it. So I think that this step of considering strategies rather than just adding them straight in is a really, really smart move. So let's go ahead and consider this strategy. So you see that there's kind of a green plus sign next to the Healthy School Action Tools. So when I click that, it brings up the hexagon tool. And this is a tool that was developed by NERN, the National Implementation Research Network. And it really tries to get us to think about, can we actually do this strategy? Is this actually a good idea for us? And you can see that, that there are 6 different areas to consider. You know, we can consider, is there good evidence that this strategy would be helpful for us? You know, does it seem like it's usable and something we could put into place? Are there good supports for it? Do we need this strategy? Is it a good fit for us? And do we have the capacity to put it into place? If you're familiar with this and the sorts of questions that are asked in the hexagon tool, you can go ahead then and give your work with your team to give a rating for all of this. If you've never used a hexagon tool before and you're not familiar with the sorts of questions that are asked for each one of these, then all you have to do is click on the little pie piece and it will pop up and it will actually give you the reflection questions to discuss with your team. And I think that this is just a really, really great tool. So many times that I know that I've done it myself, and I've worked with schools that have done it or worked with them after the fact, that that the strategy selection was kind of just based off of, you know, maybe what somebody thought or said or something that they've done in the past. And this really helps us to get at those questions about, you know, do we have the capacity to put this into place? Is this something we can actually do? Does it fit what our needs are? So just popping into the capacity, you know, did we think about the staffing requirements? Oh, geez, if we put the strategy in place, we're going to need to assign people into different positions that they haven't been in before. That's a concern, you know, or in our case with the Healthy School Action Tools, we really need an outside facilitator to help us run that. Does the health consultant at our ISD have the capacity? Did we talk to her to see if she was able to come in and help us with this? So lots of great things to really think about as you're going through. You can give the ratings for each of these right when you're in here. So you could open this up with your team, have a good conversation around the questions, and then say, okay, so where are we on with this for our capacity? And we could say, you know, I think we're probably a 4 on this. It's, you know, we could develop our capacity a little bit more, but it seems doable. Let's give ourselves a 4. So you say 4, and when you save the response, you see that it will populate it here. If you know, just by looking at other pieces, that there was already good evidence for this, you could go ahead and just give it its rating here. You don't have to go through the different pie pieces. But if you do work through each of those individually and give the rating right in there, then it will pop right over into this little matrix here. So a lot of times I'll have people say, you know, we did the rating on it. What rating do we need to make it a strategy? And so like a lot of the other tools in here, this is a tool for you and for your team's reflection. So there's nothing in here that's going to say, well, you didn't get at least a 2.5, so you cannot use this strategy, right? So there's nothing in here that's going to stop you from moving forward, no matter how you rate it. And so I think the benefit here is just in the conversation and getting the team to really think about, can we do this? Could we actually put this strategy in place, knowing all the other things that are going on? Is this going to be a good strategy for us? Do we want to move forward with it? And so it really gives a lot of good time to reflect on those sorts of questions. So for this one, let's go ahead and say that, yes, we wanted to put this into place right now. So our team may have gone through and had some conversations around each of these pieces. We went ahead and we rated each of those, and we want to include it. So I just clicked include in our implementation plan. And so down here on the blue bar at the bottom, I see that one strategy has been added to our implementation plan. Now's the time where you could go back and you could consider other strategies, or you could move on at this point and continue working on it and come back and add more strategies later. So nothing is, again, preventing you from kind of going back and forth to do those items. I also get a little check up at the top for this one, that for the HSAT, we added this to our implementation plan. So let's just kind of do one other quick one. I'm going to go to browse strategies, look under social emotional learning. And let's say that we considered the PATHS program. And we looked at this and we went out to their resource website. And this was something that has come up a couple other times. One of the board members maybe was familiar with the PASS program and asked us to use it. So we went ahead and let's consider it. And for this one, we could go through and let's say that maybe this one we weren't as sure about, there's some pretty decent evidence, but we don't really have our internal supports built for that. So it's not very usable. Yeah, we might be able to use this, but it seems like maybe at this time we don't have the capacity to put into place. Well, we get to that point and we can just say, you know what, we're not going to include this in our implementation plan. So the paths would be here as something that we knew that we went and we looked at and we considered it, but we just decided maybe not to move forward with that at this time. So again, when you're ready to move on, I should say you can't move on until at least one of them gets added to your plan. So we have this one added. Oftentimes there are multiple strategies for a goal. In this case, just for our demonstration purposes, I'm going to move on with just the HSAT in here. So I'm able to go to define our strategy implementation. And when we get here, this kind of starts to get into all kinds of details. And so we're going to get through a little bit of this today, and then we're going to pick up with this next time. So this will be kind of where we transition. So at this point, it'll have the strategy description that was pulled straight out of the strategy bank, and we're able to assign the strategy to someone in the district. So who's going to own the strategy? Is this something that the curriculum director is really going to take the lead on? Is this something that one of our social workers is going to take the lead on? Is it one of the building principals? So who's going to take the lead on this one to really make sure that this gets put into place? Make sure that it gets on our building network or school or building continuous improvement plan teams or our district teams. Who's going to be the one that's making sure that's going to really take the lead on this and make sure it's getting put into place? So we'll say that Bill for us is going to be doing that. We have a when will it start and when will it be complete? It will automatically complete our end goal date. And then as far as when it will start, you can select a time for that. For us, I'm going to say that this is going to start at the start of next school year. So this was a question that came up that I wanted to make sure that I addressed here is, can you, when you select a strategy, since we're really working on district plans, does everybody in the district have to work on that same strategy? And the answer is no. You're able to make different selections. So you might have strategies that make more sense for your secondary schools, or you might have strategies that make more sense for elementary. Maybe you have center-based programs and you want to make strategies specific around what your center-based programs are going to do. So you're able to go through and you can select which of your buildings this will actually deal with. Or if this is a strategy that applies to all your buildings, you can just select all. And so it'll select all of your buildings that are active. And if you were in our first MICIP session, it became the optional session that day about how to set up the back end of MICIP. This is all really important now, right? So you have to have your buildings set up. You have to have the right buildings in there. You have to have the people that you are going to be assigning into the system. So if you're not familiar with that, you can go back and watch the video from our optional session 1, and it goes through about how to do all of that stuff. So in our case, we went ahead and we added all of our buildings. At this point, we will start starting at our next session. We're going to get in and we're going to start to add activities. So before we do that, I have one last thing that I really wanted to show. And that is strategy implementation guides. And we just have a couple of minutes, so I might pick up a little bit more with this next time. But you'll see in our dashboard, we have some stuff here for directions, a template, and an example. So I'm just going to pull up the example just for time's sake. And this was one of the districts that I work with was really into the 5D, and they had really gotten into, so 5D is one of the evaluation protocols we use, but it's really an instructional protocol. And so they were really trying to use some of the instructional pieces for it and add those as strategies into their continuous improvement plans. And so one of the things that they wanted to add was the teacher use of formative assessment. So if people are familiar with 5D, that's one of the dimensions under the assessment domain. And so they added in here teacher use of formative assessment. They have the definition of that at the top. And what these strategy implementation guides are, you identify what are those critical non-negotiable components that you want to make sure happen for this strategy. And then you point out what the gold standard is for that, what unacceptable variations are, and if there's an acceptable variation for that. So for them, they said that the teacher provides an opportunity for students to assess their own learning in relation to the success criteria. So this for them was a non-negotiable component. And what that looked like was that students use the success criteria for self-assessment and improvement. An unacceptable variation of that was the teacher does not use success criteria or doesn't provide an opportunity for students to assess their own learning. They're also a blueprint district, and so they added teacher actions and student actions at the bottom. And then now they knew what their coaches could look for when they went into the rooms to make sure that this strategy was actually being implemented. So when you have these strategy implementation guides, it helps you dig into how are we going to put this strategy into place? How can we monitor the strategy? So kind of going back to that definition of the strategy that we looked at, a lot of that work has to happen outside of MICIP. You have to, after you choose a strategy, you really have to talk about how are we going to do this? How are we going to monitor that's going to be put into place? How will we know that what is being put in place is good? And so using these strategy implementation guides is a really great way to do that. And you'll find as you go through the MiStrategyBank, some of the strategies there have implementation guides actually uploaded as part of one of their resources. So that would be something to consider as if you're making your own strategies for use. Why not just also make the strategy implementation guide to go with it? And when you put it in MiStrategyBank, just add the strategy implementation guide as a resource. So I very quickly gave an overview of that. I might start with that next time to give a little bit more detail on it. But just the main point that I'd like to get across is if you just select the strategy and then start throwing activities at it, you're really missing a key step about how to implement that you're really going to need as you make your activities. So we'll kind of pick up with that. I know we're getting to the end of our time, so I'm sure that it's we're starting to miss some details. So we'll start with that next time. So we are at the end of our session. I wanted to just talk a little bit about next session and give everybody a few minutes to do the reflection and the feedback survey. So at our next session, we're going to pick up with activities and how to fund our strategies and how to communicate our strategies. And then we're going to actually add the plan to the portfolio, and we will have kind of completed our main what we're trying to do at our series this year is really trying to get all that stuff into the portfolio and ready to work on our plans. Once we're through with that part, we're going to give two options. One option would be that we could put you in breakouts with your teams, and your team can just get to work on stuff, get caught up, talk about how to communicate, all that sort of stuff. Also, I will present at the same time around once you've completed your plan and it's in the portfolio, how can you monitor and adjust the plan and do goal evaluation when you complete things. So I'm gonna do a little demo of that. It'll be recorded. So if you wanted team time, you can always go back and watch the recording. And like I mentioned earlier, our optional session next time is going to be around equity work and continuous improvement, and Ben's going to be our presenter for that. So that's what's happening next session. For our reflection, I really, really appreciate the people that have gone into the Jamboards and added reflections there. Our team always looks at those and pulls pieces out to make sure that we include in our future work. And we also really pay a lot of attention to the feedback survey and try to make adjustments for our next time together based off of that. So if everybody could please take a few minutes to accomplish those two tasks, I'd really appreciate it. If you have other questions that were answered today, go ahead and throw those in the chat, and we'll try to address some last minute questions as everybody's completing this reflection activity.
Also, make sure you sign out at the end with your time. We always forget that one.
Yes, and I got yelled at by my sketchy coordinator.
Ooh, no.
So please don't get me yelled at. Please go in and sign in and out.
Yeah, but if you are staying for the optional session, you can wait till that one's done.
For sure.
Dave, don't forget you can stop recording when you're ready.
Mike, you are all over it.